807 Walnut Street stands a parking lot, formerly a site for showbiz, excitement, and many harrowing deaths. The first building erected there, in the 1830s or 1840s, housed the National Circus, which featured a menagerie called the Zoological Institute. Circus animals frequently roamed around. An elephant named Columbus, from the Boston Columbian Sentinel, threw his keeper down rather viciously here on December 24, 1847. The man's crushed leg had to be amputated and he died a few days later. It was feared that the elephant, which was smashing cages and killing other animals, would escape the circus building and harm townspeople. The mayor of Philadelphia provided 2 6-pound cannons capable of destroying the animal, and they were positioned at the building's front and rear doors. Fortunately, Columbus managed to calm down before they had to be used. A larger circus, known as Welch's National Amphitheater and Circus, was established there in December of 1853. It offered performances by equestrians whose most impressive feat was riding 4 horses at once. Following this, the site embarked on its long and tortured history. The place burned to the ground 4 times in the second half of the 19th century, and most of these fires were accompanied by a number of grisly fatalities. This is the story of the unluckiest theater in America. The first fire happened on September 14 of 1861, when the old circus building operated as the Continental Theater. At least 6 but as many as 9 ballerinas burned to death. About 1,500 people were watching Shakespeare's play The Tempest. At the end of the first act, a dancer suddenly ran past the stage, her costume in flames. The flammable gauze clothing had ignited from a gas jet in her dressing room. When her sisters and some other dancers surrounded her, the fire spread to them and the teenagers screamed in agony as their skin-tight leggings combusted and scorched their flesh. After jumping from second-story windows, their burned bodies lay on George Street, now called Sansom Street. The ballerinas who made it to local hospitals suffered terribly due to lack of painkillers before dying shortly after. The proprietor, a former actor named William Wheatley, calmly told the audience to vacate the theater, although this did cause a general panic. No theatergoer perished that evening. The Continental Theater burned down completely.
Follow for part 3.
Wheatley's Continental Theater reopened to the public in 1865 as the American Variety Theater, aka Fox's New American Theater, on June 19, 1867. The theater would again see a tragedy that was considered among the worst in Philadelphia's. The Black Crook was being performed one night when fire broke out in the second story of a stable connected to the theater. 20 or 30 young ballet dancers were on stage, yet unaware the rear portion of the theater was on fire. It was written,
"The entire neighborhood was illuminated as thick columns of smoke and flame shot up several hundred feet."
Luckily, the 1867 group of ballerinas made it out safely and the audience was warned in time to leave the building, but the front wall collapsed onto volunteer firemen and others working along Walnut Street. As many as 13 were crushed to death. The American Theater was a complete loss. The place was again rebuilt as the Grand Central Theater and suffered yet another major fire. On Saturday, March 24, 1888, no loss of life was reported, but the theater was again reduced to ashes. On April 27, 1892, the again rebuilt Central Theater was destroyed in a huge blaze that also devastated the adjoining Times newspaper office on Sansom Street. This inferno, one of the most serious in Philadelphia history, made national news and was announced even in London. Several choral singers and ballet dancers were among the 70 or so performers waiting in the wings for the evening presentation of The Devil's Auction. Stagehands were lowering a portion of scenery when it contacted a gas fixture on the stage's border lights. In an instant, the flimsy canvas was in flames. Most of the Grand Central Theater was engulfed within 3 minutes, as blazing set scenery fell to the stage and fire shot up to the roof at the same time. The scenery, paint, and grease created a dense fog of stifling smoke. The audience's terrified exit caused a stampede in which many were trampled underfoot. Those who lost their lives had ascended a stairwell that was one of 2 that led to doors in back of the theater, but unfortunately led directly to the fire itself. At least 7 audience members were known to have died, and 6 performers were found beneath the theater's fallen walls. About 50 others were also hospitalized, suffering from excruciating burns and smoke inhalation. Some lost their eyesight and many actors broke limbs when they jumped to the street, from their dressing room windows onto the street as the ballet dancers of 1861 had done. The property loss amounted to nearly $1 million, including the loss of an adjacent 8-story annex occupied by the Times. Only the front wall of the Central Theater remained standing, though it was pulled down later to allow for the recovery of bodies. In what must have seemed like a recurring nightmare to the store owners and restaurant owners, the blaze extended to their buildings before it could be controlled. Much of the entire block was destroyed. The theater's proprietor, William J. Gilmore, had received sympathetic telegrams from theatrical managers all over the country, and the Academy of Music offered him the use of that theater to stage a benefit for himself and the company. The building was immediately reconstructed as Gilmore's Auditorium and opened on August 26, 1893. Gilmore's was advertised as being absolutely fireproof, and perhaps it was, for the building did not burn down again. Gilmore's became the Casino Theater in 1905 and quickly gained the reputation as Philadelphia's most popular burlesque house. The Casino Theater was demolished in 1935. Since then, the past of 807 Walnut Street has been buried under a parking lot. Who knows how many people have passed over this plot of such a tragic history?
Thanks for watching.